There's a paragraph that's underlined in my book, time after time. About page 400 in chapter 31, just another Linda.
How does it start?
Time after time. Is it not underlined in your book?
Go ahead and read it.
Okay. This is in this chapter. One of the young fellows at the Salvation Army is crying because his beloved teacher, coach, this teacher, I guess,
Oh, yeah.
had committed suicide. And Richard comes up with this quote: time after time, I saw the poor give to the poor. If you had 20 and someone asked you for 10, you gave it to them. It was different. When I got my hands on $20, it was as if some unseen force was telling someone in need to ask me for a 5, and I would give up a 10. I discovered that the same force would somehow return the 10 plus 10 more. I learned to give with joy. So that's a pretty incredible statement for someone who's homeless on the street and broke most of the time. Later in the chapter, he asks, I think Aberdeen is a lot like Bremerton. It's not the type of town where people make their dreams come true. I don't know. My question is Port Angeles that kind of town?
The same kind of town. Grew up in Aberdeen, Port Angeles, same kind of town.
Oh, you grew up in Aberdeen?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So I mean, it's a logging, fishing town, but they've got great community stuff there. You know, I mean, it's a great town, other than the rain. It's way too bad. So, interesting to read about the high school teacher who committed suicide. You know, I knew some cases down there. I'm wondering if that related to that guy. You know, and funny, we have friends we communicate with. They've never heard that story, but I think that was 20 years ago. Maybe we heard it. Maybe we heard it now. Yeah, tragic things.
Yeah. Port Angeles is kind of a logging town, used to be a fishing town.
Yeah, it still is. It's just become more of a retirement community, I think.
Yeah.
And but still it's been the basis. The fishing things are gone, but mostly.
So is PA, you think, unique a little bit in becoming the retirement community, or are places like Aberdeen and all communities, as the population ages becoming more retirement towns?
See, nobody retires to Aberdeen. So it's shrinking. I think we moved here, there were 19,000 people in Aberdeen in 17 years. I think now we're 20. Aberdeen's only shrunk, the Hope shrunk dramatically. So it's kind of the same. But you go down there and you know, there's nothing. There's a great core of people there, but you know, the community as a whole is just kind of, it's a struggle, I think. It's a struggle here at times too, but you know, we're building an art center downtown. Also, we're doing things here. You know, they're expanding their college down there, like kind of we've done here, the junior college. So there's a long time people there, and there's a lot of money in that in terms of old timber money, and so there's foundations and such that have money to give around. So that's it.
We had friends who retired, who lived here and retired and moved, not to Aberdeen, but to Long Beach, which
Yeah.
should be
That's
quite similar. It's
different status.
like the tourist town, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe not off the subject, but I just impressed with the Salvation Army as you go through this. They're an amazing organization that when they built the center here now, that's not been that many years ago, 10 years ago. I lose track of my years. So Sherry was here. Sherry was on the board for a while. She was on the board when they were building that race and second there, where they serve the dinners, and it used to be in there in the when they built the center, then they wanted to like put 5 or 6 guys in the basement of the church that were homeless, sleeping on the streets, and without the sprinkler system, the city said you can't do that. You can't look. And they had a building, a house next door they bought. They wanted to put some people in there, and they ran into the same kinds of obstacles. So even our, and like Sherry was mad, and I said, we have to understand that it's a risk, but she said, yeah, so it's not a risk for them to be sleeping, on the ground outside, so it's hard, but I always admire the work that they do. Salvation Army does. And the church there a couple times, it's not my place, but it's awesome.
I used to serve lunches, I guess it was, when they were in the basement of the old church, and yeah, I agree, and
Do they have programs like in the book?
I think they have a lunch every day.
Well, I know that, but I
Yeah.
mean, because a lot of these things, people, like the major comes in with movies and,
I don't know if they do.
okay.
I think the guy who was the major, Terry was more involved. I guess I was involved too. He was awesome.
Yeah.
He was doing all kinds of things. But the new fellow moved in, and I think some of that stuff kind of, so somewhat the charisma of the guy who was running the place then was pulling people in, and he had endless energy. And of course, that's a husband-wife thing. They're both in it up here, so at least him and his wife were. And so it was, and the new fellow, it's just, again, it's a change, and some people come in and some people go out, but I don't think he had quite the same.
Was it Boston?
Sorry.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Bowden, yes, something about that, big guy.
Yeah, he was a big
Yeah,
guy.
I remember his picture in the paper.
Did you guys talk about, I know, because I know I've missed a few weeks here, did you guys talk about the one story of the young man that had trouble with the police in Port Angeles?
I don't think that happened.
You don't think that happened?
I've never heard that story before and lived here for 30 years.
Yeah, and he got treated really poorly in the jail. Did he die in the jail? How did that-
No, I can't remember I think it was he was sort of roughed up and run out of town.
Yeah.
Oh, by the
uh,
police.
by the police. And whether that was, actual or not, I mean, those things happen. And people like that are the most vulnerable, so it's easy for that to take place. I just wondered if you had talked about that at all. Part because it was Port Angeles, I'm like, wow,
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I sure don't ever remember. Does anybody else remember that?
Well, I don't know that it would have made the news the way it was.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, you might have heard somebody died while they had been incarcerated.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's happened.
Yeah, this was,
I kind of dismissed it as maybe a bad story.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just didn't sound like, but again, I don't know, things happen in your own little bubble, but. I don't think it's reflective of Port Angeles, that's what I thought tonight.
Good idea how long ago that would have been.
in the early 2000s, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's been here 34 years and
Because I thought it was, I don't know if there was something that maybe this young man had witnessed something and they were trying to keep him quiet. Anybody remembering this from the book?
no, I remember the story from the.
Yeah.
Book, yeah, I don't mean, yeah,
Oh.
I'm assuming it probably didn't make any kind of news. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen that we, people tell stories that they never.
well, part of the problem, I was here in the early 2000s. And I was on a jury of a gruesome manslaughter case that never made the PDN. They just have so little staff and so little budget that the news, an awful lot of it just doesn't get covered.
Mhm.
So things, and this was a pretty thing that happened that wound up in a trial that I was the juror on. It was a gruesome elder abuse manslaughter case. And
When I read that, I was in the administrative part of the police department. I'd go look at, because it was pretty awful.
Yeah.
Do you remember where it was? That is better than
I did, listen, so I don't have a reference.
Yeah. She already gave her book away. To her friends. No, I don't know. It's maybe a third, 2/3 of the way through the book or something, I'm guessing.
I mean, are they talking about other people? Or it's just an isolated case?
It's kind of an isolated case, like, I remember he was talking to some fellow and he was telling him a story or something.
Okay, I'll look.
And he was just, either the guy was telling him the story, he just told it, and it was kind of just a quick little snippet, and then.
It probably really happened in Aberdeen. We just got this.
And it's interesting because I can believe it more now. Than I was there a lot longer ago.
well, why don't we move on to these last couple chapters? The Holy Ghost is a really, I don't know, important and inspiring. I guess this is where the inspiration kicks in. It's the Christmas season and he goes to bed and then is awakened by Michelle, an 18-year-old who's homeless and looking for a place to spend the night, and he gives it to her. He takes her in and puts her in the youth room on a couch or something and gives her a blanket and a couple of blankets to stay warm. And even though Richard, he doesn't believe, Michelle asked him to pray for her, and he does. So I don't know, I found that kind of interesting. My page 14. What was I? Starts out. Had come to trust. Have I not seen it? Huh. Oh, well, maybe we'll just move on, but it was a quote here. And I thought I could pick it up.
Well, this is the book where Richard said that Kurt Cobain was from, or that was another book I read, was from Seattle. Yeah, Kurt Cobain. And he's from Aberdeen.
Yeah.
I just didn't know. I
Uh,
missed that. I don't remember if it was in this book or a different.
mhm.
I think if you had trouble with the soul conversation that was going on a couple chapters before, then this conversation, with previous ministers, must have been challenged too. What was really going on for Richard there?
I don't know, and he made it sound like an out of body experience almost, and something really spiritually moving, I guess.
It sounded like an hallucination to me, which I guess is kind of an out of body experience, and I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know what was really going on there. And I'm not sure he was that pretty good.
Anyway, the very end of this chapter, because I had come to trust that not all things need to be understood or explained. Maybe that's what we're talking about. It didn't really seem to matter where or how truth came, or how we found the strength to continue sometime. At this moment, I wasn't even concerned about what I had to do. Voices were gone, but I felt remained and covered me gently. So like, he has this dream, I guess, or maybe if he did hallucinatory drugs, he never owned up to it in the book. But, anyway, he has a dream and is visited by what his mother
Yeah.
and other people that were significant in his life. I'm not sure now who all the rest of them were, but it was very, very moving, like they had been with him on this homeless journey that he was on. And well, it's another step towards him, I think, accepting God. This dream. Anyway, any other comments on that? It's kind of a neat.
Yeah, and again, this is in my head, I just kind of feeling like he was being accepted and helped. And I don't know if it was the love of that pastor or the love of that congregation, but it just gave him a different, I gave him a comfort level or a really deep comfort level that he could kind of think differently about the world, you know, as opposed to where am I gonna get my next meal? Where am I gonna sleep? Am I gonna run out of gas money before, you know, and who's gonna take care of my dog? Those just day-to-day trying to exist things. I was thinking, I don't think about day-to-day, I don't think any of us think about day-to-day existence things. Think about what we're gonna eat, but not for existence, just for our choices. And his homeless person is so consumed by those just living that it's hard for them to think in a bigger picture or to think down the road or to think that something good could happen. I think, and so it's just can't think of it's like a trap, you know, it's gotta be a horrible existence.
Well, and that's kind of one of the I think is that once you're into that situation, it's hard to get out.
This occurred when he was staying at the church.
Yeah,
He had a roof over his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of makes you wonder. Yeah. If just one little thing to bring some stability to one's life occurs, then maybe that frees you up to get a little more perspective or something, or to be open to other realities other than where my next meal is coming from. Maybe it doesn't take a whole lot, you know, just to kind of get space out of my.
well, but here we are in PA and 4 PAs having problem getting the roofs over the heads of people. The Salvation Army locally had the problem of getting a roof of people. And here we are building this big new performing arts center down by the dock. And that's not exactly it either, in the middle of town, I guess, downtown. And Richard pointed that out too, and I forget which chapter, if it's this final chapter that we're up to or the epilogue, but somewhere in here it was pointed out that Bremerton was building all this stuff. City Hall and new government building, I
They
think.
talked about a tunnel going to Bremerton from somewhere,
Yeah,
which I'd never heard of before, but
Yeah.
or maybe he misinterpreted word. But yeah, two or three different times it talks about we have all this money to do all this stuff that moves cars faster, makes what we think makes our commerce better or whatever, but then we walk right by the people on the street. That's kind of.
well, and it sounds like Bremerton had lots of them, and Port Angeles.
Well, Norm Dix was, our congressman forever. That's where he lived. And so, and the longer you stay in Congress, the more power you get. And Norton benefited the peninsula tremendously, because he could get things. Especially military things, and so I'm sure Bremerton. And it felt good when it was happening for us, but again, is that. And sometimes that's like where, and what book is about, but was where our priorities at.
Well, that was exactly the point of that part of the book, and I may have skipped over it. I'm not sure it's in this chapter, but
Can I just insert something here to talk about housing? Susan down at Taffy got a private donation, several $1,000s, several tens of thousands of bucks. And she's already built one tiny house. It's like 8 by 12, and it's something you could put someplace and plug in next door. It's got solar panels on it for heat and light, and a little inverter in it. And she says she can't get the city to permit that to be any place, and she'd like to build about 10 more of them. Just as a place to put people sort of temporarily. So it sounds like Fort PA is trying to do that too, but,
Right.
and yet we're gonna put in high density housing, on a regular city block with no parking. So, yeah, there are people, I think, trying to
Right.
create some press here so that this can happen, I guess, but it's so new, apparently, there's just a lot of unease about it or something. I mean, they're all over the place on the other side of the pond, I think.
I think you missed the time when Pam was talking.
Yeah, told us about-
You didn't talk about that in more detail.
He said that something about the electrical system, they were gonna do it at the First Methodist Church and bring in a
Right.
porta potty or something. And that the wiring wasn't quite right, and they'd have to tear off a whole side of it. Or something to fix it, so now they're using it at Taffy for a homework room, because it's not a viable place that the city will let them live. So,
There's gotta be someplace that could go.
yeah, but yeah, it was,
The discussion about money and everything just made me think of a review I read of a book called Poverty by America. It says provides a provocative and compelling, let's see, it's by a Princeton sociologist. And in the book, the author lays out public policies, laws, and tax breaks, and how they show how the US actually spends big on social programs, second only to France, it says, but gives the most to those who need it the least. Welfare dependency, he says, yes, indeed, for the richer half. And so, yeah, it's a look at how our policies and things, subsidies. One example, for instance, he says in 2020, the federal government spent more than $193 billion in subsidies for homeowners. Most families who enjoy this benefit have six-figure incomes and are white, but just $53 billion, so a quarter of that, on direct housing assistance for low-income families. That's not for a lack of need, because of chronic federal underinvestment. Only 1 in 4 extremely low-income Americans who qualify for housing aid actually get it. So that was
mhm.
Well, and a lot of the low income housing benefits, you have to have a job.
well. I'm saying I think in this, there's a sense that it's not just the smallest, slice of our society, but really probably most all of us here are benefiting on some level of these programs and things. And we sort of like it that way.
Yeah, we're voters, right? That's what they're after. You're after your vote. So, I don't know. That's a, a good solution.
So anyway, it's just kind of interesting. I don't know. I haven't picked it up yet.
So let's see if we can finish up the last chapter, perhaps not in 4 minutes, but anyway, it starts out with he being gone after his big night with the ghosts, the dream where his mother and all these people come to him. Why, he wants to go talk to sea the next morning, and he gets to the place where the armadillo was parked usually, C was gone, his camper and his best friend, C was gone. And he goes inside to talk to Alan that runs the mini mart, and Alan says, oh, C was an angel, didn't you know? And he took off and flew away like a bird, well, or like an angel. So I don't know. Was he an angel? I don't know. Anyway, he goes on here to say, God had, after all, sent me many angels. I had been blessed to meet C, blessed to meet the lady in red. And he goes on and lists all these people who had helped him along the way. And there were quite a few. And now he feels blessed by God and feels like all these people that had helped him were an angel. On the next page, again, I've got a paragraph that's underlined. She taught me you have to give half of what you have to help a fellow human being, and sometimes more. When the need is great enough, you must reach even deeper in your pocket and find all that you have and give all that you have to a stranger with no hope of reward. And he taught me that this is the ultimate gift, not only to the receiver, but also to the one who gives. So anyway, that was underlined, and I thought it was worth sharing, I guess.
Way back, the first or second chapter that we studied, he was learning to beg. He was at the Albertsons and the other big grocery across the street.
He was learning.
And he starts this theme of angels. He was seeing angels that found him versus angels that he went looking for. And he concluded at that point that he needed to go looking for angels. But in fact, all of these angels appeared in his life. And it's been a concurrent theme of thinking of people that played an angelic role in his life. And he's naming an awful lot of the homeless people that he recognizes had that role. I'm not sure that it moved me so much, but it was part of his theme of what he was writing about. And so it challenges us. Who are the angels that we encounter? What do we think that they're somebody's spirit that has passed away, or somebody sent from God, or angels unaware? I know is
or maybe challenging us to be more angelic, more caring, more giving. That's just a question.
we potentially could be somebody's angel.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think and I think it goes both ways. I remember, I don't know why, but to this day, I remember a man when I was in Grants Pass, that came by the church, and he had some sort of intellectual disability. Was looking kind of for a way to get home, and we were able to call somebody back where he was. I can't remember where he's going, but to check on his story a little bit, and social worker there that knew who he was, and we were able to get him on a bus and get him back. And I just remember that and kind of feel like it was, for some reason, it just felt different. Like, was that an angel that came and we were able, and he's sort of almost like he gave something to us in a weird way as we gave to him. I don't know if you ever had experiences like that, but yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the end here in more ways than one. This is another quote from the next page. After 2 years of wishing and waiting for the angel of death to take me in the night, I now wanted to live, so he's turned a corner on his depression, sounds like, and that's what he needed was a roof over his head and warm, someplace warm to sleep and some food in the refrigerator, and made a huge difference. He concludes with, he now has a new addiction to the drug called unconditional love. So the end is pretty uplifting, I guess, or what's the word he used, inspirational.
Not everybody can do this, but there is a fair amount of, I guess, connection between journaling, writing, and sort of sorting one's thoughts out. And you kind of wonder to what extent even writing the book might have been sort of therapeutic or helpful.
Oh, yeah.
In
He,
terms of, getting a handle on things. Not everybody can do that. And
he says that in the epilogue,
does he?
that writing the book was healing. So, yeah,
I believe it, yeah.
yeah. And the epilogue says quite a little more, and we're out of time. So we need to let Matt go and the rest of you that are headed for second service. Anyway, no one wants to close us in. So who should I call on?
I'll break down.
Go ahead.
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for Richard and his story. And we reminded that everyone has a story. And we need to judge those stories not only with our heads, but with our hearts. And that reminded to pass along the love that we receive to others in whatever ways we can. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, John, for facilitating.